once again, I want to say thank you for being with us here this Sunday morning at Messiah Lutheran in Auburn, and invite you to kind of breathe in a little bit these three readings that are part of our worship today. First from Genesis, and then Romans, and then, of course, the Gospel from Mark. And as you breathe them in, I don't know if you, like me, will feel a little bit of a shudder, a little bit of a shake, because these are extremely transformative readings from Scripture. They get at God doing strange, wonderful, powerful, transformative things in the lives of people here on this earth. So making things upside down that life is never the same again. And if that doesn't give you a little shudder, then I think you just might as well lay down and let this whole faith thing go, because you don't got it yet. And I don't say that in a way that's meant to be judging, because the first person who I will say doesn't quite got it yet is me. And I've been at this for a long time. And it still, once in a while, hits me in a way that creates a shudder. It's like a little earthquake that goes through me, and it opens my mind to the fact that God is doing something bigger than most of us give God credit for. And I want to say it first from my own perspective, because if you don't know me, I'll give you a little insight into me and my life. About 5 minutes before worship, I was in here in the sanctuary vacuuming. Because there was, we rearrange things and stuff gets over, and I need things neat. It's just who I am. I need things in line, I need them neat, and anything that gets into that kind of order needs to be removed, mostly for me through a vacuum. I mentioned last Sunday that we just got a puppy, and it's hell for me. I don't do well with puppies. I love puppies. Puppies are amazing in and of themselves, but they mess up your life. God messes up our lives. A colleague of mine that I served with for 7 years at Bethlehem in Tacoma, Pastor Rebecca Shervin, I am sure would come in on Sunday morning before me and go up to the altar and move the candles and the communion elements just a little bit, and then watch and see if when I came in, if I would readjust them and get them all in line again. And I know she was somewhere in the sanctuary laughing at me because of my obsessiveness for order. And somewhere in the universe or outside of it, God is laughing at me, because I keep telling God, don't mess up my world. And God keeps saying, if you're not willing to lose your life for the sake of the gospel, well, you're not getting it yet. I mean, think for a moment about Abram, who becomes Abraham. And it's not just a name change. It's a turn your life upside down kind of change that Kirsten read from Genesis this morning. God invites Abram to go for a walk. A relationship continues to be born between God and Abram. And then falling forward on his face, Abram is remade. And that change of name is just a little sign of the greater transformation Abram is going to undergo. Abram becoming Abraham. Someone who's 99 years old and good as dead, and their body is gonna have children. And Sarai, who becomes Sarah, has conceived and born a child. Her life long is going to be the mother of a multitude of nations. And God is laughing. God is laughing all the way, saying, I can mess your life up. It does not matter if you're 99 or have been barren. I can bring new life into this situation. I mean, throughout those early pieces of Genesis, God just kind of lays it out. God says, I'm going to be your God. You're going to be my people. I'm going to give you a land in which to dwell. And descendants as numerous as the stars of the sky or grains of sand on the beach. And guess what? Through you, I'm going to bring a blessing to all nations, and it's going to rework everything. Buckle up. Let's go for a ride, God says. How do we respond to that? I mean, how do we live into that, especially those of us who harbor this illusion that just by keeping everything in line and orderly, that life is blessed? God says, that's not how blessings come. Or as Mike said in his children's sermon, if you are looking for the big house and the big bank account and fancy and fast cars, you don't get it. As I was watching that, I was imagining us being the marbles inside the little rope and God flicking us out into this crazy, wonderful journey called the journey of faith. Every time Mike's finger flicked one of those, I felt myself fly out into the universe, and God saying, guess what? You are on my roller coaster now. It's the roller coaster of faith. Get ready to do some great things in the world. When I was in seminary in Chicago, we were sort of as part of the Chicago experience and the seminary experience. We were put in little pods and transported around the city on different Sundays to hear different kinds of preaching and worship, and experience different kinds of worship in all sorts of congregations throughout the city. And I remember one Sunday morning in a Black Baptist church on Chicago's South Side, there was a question that the preacher posed to the whole congregation, but it hit me and it has haunted me ever since, all the years of my ministry. The preacher said, how am I going to know what God is doing through you? How am I, and he said this to his whole congregation, how am I going to know what God is doing through you? What am I going to see that tells me you're on that roller coaster of faith? It's haunted me. How would you answer that preacher in your life? I've tried in mine to create some snappy little mission and ministry statement for myself. It goes something like this. It evolves over time, but it's something like, as God lives in me, I'm going to live for others. A life of compassion and generosity, and be open to being transformed. I mean, that I just kind of say it, as God lives in me, I'm going to live for others so that there can be generosity, there can be compassion, and there can be transformation in the world. That's kind of how I've tried to boil it down. And if I was to ever meet that preacher again, I would say, this is what I've tried to be about, and these are the signs of it. I remember that preacher after the service, out in what we would call the narthex, sitting with a young couple. I just saw them out of the corner of my eye, consoling them in the midst of a loss of a child. It had been talked about a little bit during the service. And I'd never seen, in the span of just a few minutes, this transformation in this preacher's bearing from being exhorting of a new and transformed life to consoling and being compassionate, to encouraging the congregation to be generous in their care of this couple. Compassion, generosity, transformation. How about you? What's your faith mission statement? What would it look like? How would I or anyone else know what God is up to in your life? What would we look for? Paul in Romans cautions us that it is not what we do that gets us in right in relationship with God. Paul cautions us to flip that around because God has gotten into our lives and built a relationship with us. Because God has done these things, therefore, how are we going to live the roller coaster? What is it going to look like? The things we do don't get us the relationship. The relationship that's given give us the opportunity to live in crazy and strange new ways in the world. I love how Paul says it. As we live in the presence of God, in whom Abraham believed, the one who gives life to the dead, this one in each and every one of our lives calls into existence the things that do not yet exist. How is that going for us? What things don't yet exist in our life God is calling into being? I was thinking about this past year and all the ups and downs of the pandemic. I was thinking about the marches where there was a call for transformation in terms of the experience that black folk and brown folk and folks who are in the LGBTQI community, and how folk who have sort of always been pushed to the margins are standing up and going, look, we got an opportunity to transform things here in this United States. What's God doing inside of us to align us with that urge, that call to transformation that is being made by all sorts of folks who traditionally find themselves dismissed, discarded? What is God doing in us? I mean, if God can bring a couple that's in their 90s to new life and new birth, God can do that for us in our hearts and minds and in our nation. It's not impossible for God. Calls into existence the things that do not exist. Racial justice, equality amongst all people, care and concern for those who suffer and yet we don't want to see. If God can do it with an aging couple, God can certainly do it for all of us. It is not an easy path, though, as Jesus kind of opens our hearts and minds to in today's gospel. There is a price to be paid as one gets on the transformation train. As one jumps on that roller coaster, there is a price to be paid. For Jesus, focusing on the call to transform the world that he received from God. Last Sunday we talked about it a little bit. He was baptized and the Spirit filled him and he got pushed down in the desert. And as he talked about the kingdom of God, compassion for all, generosity for all, transformation for all. It's a new time, Jesus said. Good news is here. Turn and live into it. Invest your whole body, mind, and spirit in it. Now Jesus today says, as we do that, there's going to be a price to pay. In fact, someone might seek your life in order to stop it. Let's not be naive. People don't want transformation. They don't really want change. We like things in order. And we like to vacuum before worship. and making sure the candles on the altar are all in their correct places. I know I do. The forces that create stagnation are strong. It doesn't take a puppy getting thrown into your life to realize how strong they really are. That's on a personal level. On a national level, they're even stronger. So none of us should be unnerved by the fact that as people call for change, there is an opposite and equal reaction to say, no, we're going to keep them the same. If you're black, stay in your place. If you're brown, stay in your place. If you're LGBTQI, stay in your place. Equal and opposite reaction. We're going to keep things the same. If any want to become my followers, Jesus said, let them deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. For if you want to save your life, you'll lose it. And those who lose their life for my sake and the sake of the gospel will save it. And that's the good news, folks. Is the things we hold on to, the lines we vacuum into the carpet, those things will kill us, actually. The way things are killing us. And Jesus says there's a whole new life out there for all of us. One in which we live compassionately and generously and transformatively with one another. That's the real life, Jesus says. Let's lean into it and let's live it together. Jesus did it by casting out demons, healing the sick, cleansing the unclean, eating with the outcasts, feeding the multitudes, giving sight to the blind. Those were all signs. Those were Jesus' answer to that black preacher on Chicago's South Side. If Jesus heard those words, he would say, this is what I'm doing. Excuse me for a moment. This is what I'm doing. What are we doing? And how are we going to do it?